Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, I'm going to be talking about summer maintenance and summer watering and pruning and some of the things that I do in my yard to kind of relieve the stress on shrubs and trees. I've got the video facing this direction because the sun's coming up behind me and you can actually see the water vapor when the sun is coming up in the morning in the air. That's how muggy it is right now. You know, it's 95 every afternoon, and you know, some of the plants are struggling because I've planted so much this year, and for some reason we just can't buy any rain here. It's raining around us frequently, but the rains I've gotten are extremely superficial, meaning that it rains really hard and it seems like you got something out of it, but you can go kick the mulch back and it barely got through the mulch. So just not getting a whole lot. So I'm doing a little more watering than I normally am. People are asking this question a lot, and I am planting plants like crazy, and I think people think you can't really plant plants this time of year. So I want to go through some of those techniques that I use. I cannot stress enough how important mulch is, especially in midsummer, because when I turn on the hose and water a plant, that mulch does a great job of capturing that water. The water just immediately goes into the ground and the soil's able to absorb it. If you have bare dirt or even turf around your plants, any large volume of water just runs off really quickly and doesn't soak in very well. So keep that in mind. The other thing that mulch does is it does a great job of cooling the roots on your plants. Most plants, the roots are up in the top 3 or 4 inches of soil, and so the sun can really burn, cook, and kill roots, and we really see that in the nursery business. This is something you learn growing plants, is the black plastic pots that we use, which do a great job of getting plants started early in the spring by warming the roots up, and do a great job of getting us some extra growth near the end of the year. Also, in the midsummer, burn the roots off the plants. All the black plastic pots on the outside of the row, usually the roots are actually burned off on one side. The roots are just all concentrated on the other side of the container. So you can see that if you ever purchased a plant like that and only one half had roots, that's what that actually was. So again, mulch is extremely important. I'm going to go through and show you several things in my yard that I've planted recently and how I go about handling different situations where plants are wilting, and how I'm going about watering right now. So first of all, it is good to have a good collection of tools, you know, to make these jobs fast. I've got some hedging to do on some boxwoods, so these gas pruners will make quick work of that. Any little pruning job, obviously I'm using hand shears and hand pruners, and I've got that electric tree saw you guys have seen me use quite a bit if I need to take limbs off of trees. These items that I've planted in the shade, you know, like these hydrangeas right here, I've planted very recently. Because it's in the shade most of the day over here, they're not really heat stressing as bad as other plants. I'm just coming over here about once a week and really just drowning this space while it continues to be abnormally dry. I have some very big planting jobs going on. These Crape Myrtles right here, these Delta Series Crape Myrtles from the Southern Living Plant Collection, see the flowers on them now? These are actually going to get planted over at the garden center. And when they do, I'm actually going to take those flowers off the top of them because that's going to drought stress them big time. This one right here is would make people cry. But all of these hydrangeas, I've already dug the holes for all of these hydrangeas, and they're ready to go in the ground. But I am in all likelihood going to take these flowers off when I do it. Same thing on these boxwoods. There's 40 boxwoods that I'm about to plant. I'm just going to take the top 2-3 inches off of those when I plant them. This Viburnum right here, this copper top Viburnum, is wilting on the top. I'll go through and just, you know, take the top out of all of those. Same thing with these azaleas. Here's the top of this azalea right here. I can see, hopefully you can see that right there where it's wilting. That's what I'll end up doing, is just taking a small amount off. This Viburnum right here, this Chinese Viburnum, I just transplanted this. It was more in this area over here, but when I came in here and started digging these paths out, I wanted it closer to this curve in the corner. So it really needs the same thing. It just needs to, I need to go through here and just take the tips off of all of these branches, and it will use far less water. I'm not saying I'm not going to have to water it, and I actually watered it yesterday, and you can see that dark area in that mulch, how wide of an area that I watered. Okay, make sure you're watering all the way out to the drip line and saturating it very, very well. Then I'll be able to go several days without watering it, and without this new growth trying to continue right here, I'll have to water it far less. Now, the things that I had planted much earlier in the season, like this oak leaf hydrangea, you know, these flowering trees that I had planted in the fall, all of those are holding up just fine. I'm getting an adequate amount of rain to take care of those things with the mulch, you know, as long as they're mulched. I just planted these wax myrtles in the last few days. This video is actually going up tomorrow, and I'm going to just take right here. I'll probably use the head shears to do it, and I can make very quick work of taking the new growth off the top of these, and they'll use far less water. So this is more boxwoods that got planted there. I'm going to do the same thing with these. I'm just going to take those gas shears and just, you know, off with their heads. I just planted all these Shasta Daisies in here. They need to be cut back as well. I waited for them to finish blooming in the containers because, you know, I was going to take the flowers off otherwise, so I just kind of enjoyed them in the containers, and then I put them in the ground, and now I'm going to cut them in half. I'll probably get some residual flowers on them. So this is a front yard space that I had planted in a series of videos earlier this year. I've got several shrubs that are close to this tree, and I've talked about planting near established trees that are drought stressing every single day. It doesn't matter how much I water them. You see it's well watered. That dark spot right there, it got watered yesterday. It got watered really, really thoroughly. It's still wilting a little bit this morning. There's just no possibility that this plant can take up enough water for whatever reason. The roots are damaged, the tree is stealing from it, something is going on with it. So I need to slow the growth down on it. It's got a lot of new growth. So it's trying to grow, and it's drought stressed at the exact same time. So we'll just do a little bit of pruning on him and be totally fine. These yews that are a little further out here have had no problem whatsoever. So, you know, here in a very small space, I'm making different watering decisions. What I need to do is get it where I'm watering these things exactly the same. Right now I'm having to water this one 2 or 3 times as much. So I'm going to cut it back and change that formula where I'm now going to be watering everything equally. My intention with this sunshine ligustrum is to cone shape it over time, and so I'm trying to get some height out of it right now, but it is wilting every afternoon. You can see how much new growth is on it. So I'm going to come here on the sides and just take these, just the tips of this growth off all the way around, but I'm going to leave the height in it because my ultimate goal here is to get it to grow tall and narrow. On these containers, these ones that are out here in front of my porch that are in the sun, they need water pretty much every day now, and pretty much all of my annual plantings in my yard, and that would include the vegetable garden. You know, while it's not raining, I plant in that bark and compost mix, so it dries out pretty regularly every day. So all annuals and containers that are in the sun are pretty much going to need water every day in this 95-degree heat. So now taking a look at this big Salvia garden that I did earlier in the season. They've stretched out here. They're 3.5 feet tall or so. The flowering has definitely slowed down on them. I've got bees and hummingbirds still finding flowers and working them pretty hard. I don't want to take all these flowers away from them at once, so I'm going to take the back 2 or 3 pieces and cut them probably in half, because they'll just come right back out and start blooming. And I'm going to leave several others. This one right here and the one right there were cut back already, and they're coming back out. So as soon as I see them start to bloom again, I go in here and take a few more back so they constantly have something to be working on. The reason I'm coming in here and cutting this salvia, it is still blooming, but it's drought stressing every afternoon. They're just not established enough yet. When they come back up next year, I don't think I'll have to do as much watering. I will have to water them next year. You know, it's a flowering perennial. It's used water like crazy all summer, but right now I'm having to water them almost every day because of they're just not established enough to have this much growth on the top. Shade, of course, is very helpful with all of these drought-related issues. These deciduous azaleas that went in here, covered in new growth, never really wilt. I'm watering them, you know, maybe twice a week right now. But once they're established, I just won't need to really do a whole lot of ongoing watering on them, period. But this goes into the shade in the afternoon. These camellias were just planted, and like I say, normally I'm going to go through here and I'm going to take off the tips on all this growth, but I'm going to wait and see if they're wilting in the afternoon. I'm going to wait and see if they can manage to maintain this much foliage without stressing, and if they can, I'm not going to cut them because flower buds are going to start to develop on these pretty quickly now. Here's the big shrub that was moved. Sorry about my shadow, but this is I moved this a few weeks ago. This afternoon shade's really helping this. I'm waiting to see some new growth on it. But again, when I moved this big camellia, I said that if I saw this thing continuing to drought stress, I'd prune it some more. And I have pruned it one more time. I've taken some more of the growth off of it, but I think I've kind of stabilized it now, and I'm just watching it. I've left enough new growth pieces on it that I can monitor. That's where the wilting is going to happen, is any place where there's new growth like that. If I see that wilting on it, I'm going to go in here and get after it even a little bit more. I've planted 3 climbing hydrangeas. I actually did a video on this, haven't put it up yet. It'll be up pretty soon. These have just a ton of new growth on them, and I've planted them right at the base of a tree that it's eventually going to climb on. So there's really no chance of me overwatering this next to this tree. So I'm just going to pour the water on them, and I'm going to keep the new growth for now. If I find that I'm watering it, but it's still wilting, what that's telling me is there's just not enough root mass to actually supply the top of the plant. Then I've got to get that in balance, and I'll go up in here and cut some of the top off. But I'm hoping to actually get some more growth on these so I can get them attached to the trees this season. So if I was going to give a summary of what I'm doing in my yard right now, water-wise, things that are just going in the ground, things that I'm planting right now, and I'm planting a lot of things right now in this heat. Doesn't bother me at all. Doesn't really bother the plants all that much if you handle it properly. Anything that's going in the ground right now, I'm cutting some of the growth off of it. Anything that was spring or summer planted this year, those are things that I'm monitoring closely, and I'm watering them once and maybe twice a week right now in this heat. I'm hoping to get a real rain at some point. If I can get an 1.5 inch or 2 inch thunderstorm, which we frequently get and should be getting, once a week, then I would back off to almost nothing. I wouldn't have to give them a lot of ongoing watering. I want to wean them off as fast as possible, and I do drought stress plants a little bit. I let them wilt and tell me they need water. Where I can, you have to be careful on conifers. You have to be careful on needle plants because they don't do a very good job of telling you anything. So make sure you're checking those things. If you've got junipers and arborvitae and Leyland cypress, any of those kinds of things, you need to be checking those things because they're not good at telling you. They'll just start thinning out in the middle and look terrible. Things that have been in the ground since last fall or even longer, if those things are drought stressing, then I'm going in and pruning those a little bit and getting them cut back. I assume that the root competition from the other established things is actually what's causing that problem. So I just get the top of the plant in balance with the bottom of the plant, and usually that works out where then I can get back to watering that bed all the same amount of water all at the same time. I don't want plants in a bed where I'm having to water this one 5 times a week and this one 2 times a week, and that one, I'd like to have them all pretty uniform. So if something is wilting way before anything else, I'm taking a little bit of growth off the top of that. So I hope that's helpful. I really, this is probably the most amount of watering that I have had to do in my yard in all the years that I've been here. We are just getting very sparse rain where we're getting any at all. And the 95-degree temperatures don't bother the plants all that much. It's very humid. Plants are very good at grabbing water out of the air as well as the soil. So the plants aren't as bothered by that as you would think if they were getting some help from the sky. They'd be good to go on their own, but as it stands right now, I'm watering until further notice. So thank you very much for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for future videos and upcoming landscape videos of all these things that are going in the ground right now.